Some recent research on my part, mostly of Immanuel Kant and his considerable influence on psychology and Jung in particular, as well as a discussion with fellow celebrity types contributor Boye Akinwande, whose name I just mispronounced, has all lent me a number of insights that I would like to share with you guys, more or less for your contemplation, just to think about. All of the functions are ultimately subjective in the more or less traditional sense of being rooted in the subject. Extroverted functions, for instance, while striving to be objective and therefore taking a different approach to interpreting stimuli, are not necessarily more, quote, hooked into the true outside world, the noumenal realm, if you will, than introverted functions are. As Jung points out, quote, from a higher point of view, it by no means follows that the objective situation is in all circumstances the normal one. It can quite well be temporarily or locally abnormal, unquote. Later, he notes, quote, the world exists not merely in itself, but also as it appears to me. Indeed, at bottom, we have absolutely no criterion that could help us to form a judgment of a world which was unassimilable by the subject, unquote. Hence, while extroversion may be an orientation of consciousness that strives for the richest and most objective understanding of incoming phenomena from the noumenal realm, that is no guarantee of its accuracy, given that the world exists only as humans perceive it, in terms of color, space, time, sound, odor, etc. Introversion, then, is enveloped in the various factors and preconditions for our interpreting the world, namely those particular factors and preconditions that are either entirely personal or which in Jung's view are collectively inherited instincts, i.e. the collective unconscious. This is taking obvious influence from the philosopher Immanuel Kant, who had a strong influence on Jung himself and who says, in essence, that our minds are not just windows that peer into the world and decide what to do about it. I talked a little bit about this in my collective unconscious video. Rather, our minds actively construct the world. It is somewhat like how an infrared picture uses certain colors to denote certain wavelengths that are otherwise invisible to our eyes. We have no idea what shades of infrared, quote, look like, and as far as we're concerned, it doesn't matter what they, quote, really look like, whatever that's supposed to mean. In fact, things only look like something because there's a subject interpreting it. What really matters is how we ourselves detect them, and we detect them by assigning them somewhat arbitrary color schemes. Our eyes do the exact same thing with regular colors, the visual spectrum. In order to make sense of the information that is streaming in from the world, we have to frame it in certain ways, organize it in certain ways, interpret it certain ways, but not because it is, quote, actually is that way, but because as far as we can be concerned, it is. This is the inspiration Carl Jung's archetypes, you can probably guess. Preconditions for understanding the world, frames within which we can organize the sense data we receive from the world. I believe that this is the case with the functions as well. They are different ways in which humanity frames the information given them, different conditions for understanding the world, filters through which information comes through and which help to develop the actual personality, the ego, if you will. For example, those who prefer the FETI axis, assuming that I'm correct about it, must frame their understanding of the world in terms of the assumption at bottom we are all just different manifestations of the same nature, or however you'd like to put that. Extroverted functions are those frames or filters that strive to interpret data as it came to him from the object, while introverted functions rely principally on what the sense impression constellates in the subject. Those are both quotes from Jung. Both are different ways of interpreting the outer realm as it comes to us through the filter of our subject. Extroversion is striving to eliminate the biases of the subject from its calculations, using only those aspects of the subject that it feels are sufficiently related and oriented by incoming information. Introversion, however, embraces its deeper subjective accumulations and prefers to interpret data entirely in relation to those things, entirely framed in terms of past experience and inner ideas. One of the implications of this view is that a supposedly extroverted type can very well be completely out of touch with reality, but not because their internally accumulated ideas are out of whack with the world, rather because the objective experience they've accumulated over time is out of whack with the world. For example, as Boye Akinwande has shrewdly pointed out, someone like Kane West, who is deplored as incredibly self-centered and inappropriately outspoken, can very well still be FE dominant or FE auxiliary, because, as Akinwande put it in our correspondence, quote, "This sentiment doesn't even need to be truly objective," referring to FE. Type is a matter of consciousness, and the FE type can simply think that the sentiment is objective. I would argue that all of humanity is in such a position of pure subjectivity. We have no temporally provided Archimedes viewpoint somehow exempt from the condition that reality is understood by a subject of limited perspective and biasing experiences. And even if you were at an Archimedes viewpoint, you'd still have to be a subject interpreting the information in some certain way. Hence, some of my earlier descriptions of extroversion as being more socially malleable, responsive, or conformist, I think those are still accurate, but they are somewhat misleading precisely because they assume society means the same society that I myself experience or that everybody else experiences. An FE dominant type, accommodating though they may be, are just as likely to be a reformer or pundit for social change because society does not measure up to the objective standard that they have formed from whatever locally abnormal factors. Likewise, an FI type may oppose them in favor of what turns out to be statistically the majority, precisely because they happened to subjectively and personally interpret information in such a way that their conclusions so aligned with the majority. So let me know what you think of that in the comments below. It's just another idea of mine amongst many that I think is useful for understanding the functions. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.